flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
You want to see maybe what your rookie quarterback can do maybe before the offseason to see if you want to stay with Kirk?
Yeah, but Zimmer might be gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Zimmer might be gone. Does Zimmer care about the rookie quarterback? I don't think he cares at all.
If he thinks that Sean Mannion can give them the best chance to win, that's probably not a good sign for your...
Well, for Zimmer, though,
Problem.
wouldn't Zimmer want Kellen Mond to come in and light it up for these last couple of games? Well, Kirk's gonna
Light
be
it
back.
up.
And then give him hope and try to save your job. Like, is that a possibility?
And Kellen Mond's ball player.
The McAfee guys
It's the best.
The McAfee guys.
Hey, I sing on this show.
No, that's okay.
That's all right.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying, he's not the first guy to sing on a show, okay? Just because he's a former punter.
Yeah, I think we should maybe leave the singing to the professionals.
Hold that.
Show, yeah.
Hold that.
Pat McAfee's not a professional.
Yeah. Once you get quads like McAfee, we will welcome your takes on the show.
Nope. All right, this is Mackie and Judd, the non-karaoke edition of Mackie and Judd, daily Minnesota sports, entertainment, fodder, and speculation. Because
reckless speculation.
Last night on Purple After Dark, on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and also podcast feed, we basically spent 30 minutes going through Kirk Cousins replacements with our friend Realistic Randy. Because I think, as you can see all of this unfolding, Vikings are almost certainly going to make some changes next week. They've got a big decision to make on Kirk Cousins and the big bloated $46 million cap hit, or 45 or whatever it is next year. But the biggest question I see from mostly the Cousins Crusaders, but also just curious Vikings fans, how are you going to replace the second greatest quarterback in Vikings history? I mean, it's basically him and Fran Tarkenton, and those are the only two guys on the Mount Rushmore of Vikings quarterbacks. Dude puts up 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns every year. He's got a perfect smile. He's never even got so much as a parking ticket. He's perfect. How can you replace perfection? All of these other things around him should be replaced, right? And so I have for you guys a list of 7 options to replace Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
If the Vikings should decide to do so.
Okay.
These are what I think are realistic options, and I've put them in 3 different categories, which you will find out about here. And preview, you guys are going to do the same thing on tomorrow's Thursday episode of Purple Daily.
Oh, there's a lot of change coming.
It's overdue.
A lot of change coming.
Yeah. Now, I want to remind people, the people that think, well, where are you going to get a better quarterback than Kirk? He's like the 10th or 12th best quarterback in a 32-team league. Like, you can't do better than that. That's the best you can possibly do. Well, it's less about the individual player and whether you can do better, quote unquote, and that bar is not as high as a lot of people think. It's about roster construction. Let's remind the audience that the Vikings have gone to the playoffs with Tavares Jackson and Christian Ponder. Not because they're better than Kirk Cousins. They aren't. Because of roster construction and salary cap. Those guys made a lot less money relative to the cap, and it allowed the Vikings to build a better offensive line, pay a big running back and Adrian Peterson during a time where that mattered more, defensive players, etc. So the first category is, if you're going to pay big money, get someone better than Cousins. And I got 2 quarterbacks in the first section of my replacement pecking order list here. Number 1 is Russell Wilson. It's been 2 seasons now, and he's been banging on the door to get out of Seattle. He still has multiple years of prime left. Now, he has a $37 million cap hit, which actually is a lot. It's $8 million less than Kirk's cap hit for next year. And he's got 2 years left on his contract. I know this is the worst season probably of his career. He's been banged up. He's had was it like a thumb or a finger injury or something? Mm-hmm. He's not been happy in Seattle, not been happy with the run-first, antiquated system. So get him in, get him re-energized, build a scheme around him with a new coach, a new system, and show him Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, and a rehabbing Irv Smith Jr. and Dalvin Cook, and Kene Nwangwu. These are the weapons that you'll get to play with. Russell Wilson, it would probably take at least a first-round pick, if not multiple first-round picks. And maybe Seattle opts to just get rid of Pete Carroll and keep Russell Wilson. Right. But that's the first phone call I'm making is, how available is Russell Wilson?
All right. So I'm assuming that there's going to be a new GM making the football decisions and a new coach. I'm assuming that they are going to want to take this team in a direction where they don't take it down for a long time, but they also understand that they're not prepared to pop immediately. And here's what I really want. I really want a GM and coach who feel confident in themselves. That's an important thing here, that they can find a quarterback in the draft at some point. It's not going to be this spring, but at some point soon. So all of that being said, I don't think I would take Wilson because I don't think I'm prepared right now to have the results that I would want if I took on that cap hit and that player. Now, if I'm Wilson, this intrigues me. This intrigues me more, I think, if I'm him. I love the name if I thought this team was prepared to go right now. I don't know that they are. I'm not saying I'm not intrigued. I'm saying I don't think for my long-term or for my planning purposes that this is the name I would go with.
I guess I think Russell Wilson is multiple wins better than Kirk Cousins. And the Vikings are already a flirtatious playoff team. And so by just swapping those two guys out with no other changes, I think you're a playoff team.
Right. Jax?
Yeah, I would actually do this. Keep in mind, too, the cap does go up next season in 2022. It does increase to $208 million. So your cap has a little bit more room to work with. And then also, let's just say it's Russell Wilson and it costs you a first-round pick to get him. If Russell Wilson shows in 2022 like, he was fine, but it's the same thing. Like he's got a lot like Kirk Cousins. He needs a good offensive line still to be, even though he's mobile, he still needs a solid offensive line. You could cut him in 2023 and still save a crap ton of money. So, like, it's not like you're inheriting Russell Wilson and a large cap hit and a large contract for years to come. You basically can say, 2022, let's roll one more time, just with a different quarterback. I would be in on that idea. I totally would.
All right, so let's get to the second quarterback here in the first category, which is, again, if you're going to pay big money for a quarterback, find someone better than Kirk Cousins that can elevate. I personally would feel uncomfortable with this. But it's a phone call that I think most general managers would at least explore. Deshaun Watson. It's a $40 million cap hit. I think he's got like 4 years left on the contract that he just signed. But that $40 million cap hit, again, is less than Kirk Cousins' cap hit for next year. And he's a better quarterback. I think he's levels better. He's more mobile. He's actually, 2 years ago in 2019, Deshaun Watson led the NFL in game-winning drives. Like he's been excellent late in games. I know they had that weird train wreck season in 2020, but like literally the roster was trying to get Bill O'Brien fired. J.J. Watt wanted out. They traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals. The whole thing was weird. So I almost really don't count that season against him. Again, I would be uncomfortable with this just based on all these reports about his questionable, at best, interactions with women. But he is an excellent quarterback.
Oh, he's fantastic. But yeah, I'm out unless the baggage disappears in a positive way. If he's cleared of all accusations and, I don't know, potentially down the road charges, like if that's all gone, then yeah, this guy's great. He's fantastic. The problem is if he's not cleared and like if this is still going to be an issue and he's still being sued and it's not one, if this was one suit, I might be like, okay, we can get around that.
Yeah, it's like
but
30.
This is multiple. Yeah. And so I would love to try to get him with the right circumstances. I don't think it's going to get cleared up soon enough though. So unfortunately, I guess from a football standpoint, I'm out. But I love the player, like the player previous to the accusations, marvelous player. But I can't do this, and I'm also not quite sure. I mean, he could be at some point here, once this all starts to play out, suspended by the league still. Like he sat out this year. He has not been suspended officially yet. So like I'm not going to trade for him with the baggage over his head still, and then have him suspended. So I can't do it. But it's not because I'm dismissing him as a player.
Yeah, I like Deshaun Watson a lot, but the baggage there is I think too heavy. So I wouldn't. My bigger problem would be that if I'm giving up like multiple first round picks, that's honestly where I'm even more out on the idea. Like, eventually, I think the Texans are going to have to accept they're not going to get the king's ransom that they can get for Deshaun Watson. Like, no one wants that baggage. He's a damn good quarterback, but he also hasn't played in over a year. What's the cost to get him is also, I think, even the bigger question on top of his off-the-field acquisitions that could just be a PR nightmare for this team. And I think it's an image that the Vikings have done a better job at shedding. I kudos to Mike Zimmer. I think he's done a really good job of getting that off-the-field stuff not as prevalent as it used to be earlier in my lifetime, at least. Do you want to inherit that risk again with Deshaun Watson? And I think the obvious answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, they just had the Jeff Gladney situation. It's tough. All right, category number 2 here. I'm calling this more appropriately priced Tier 2 quarterbacks. So I know that there are some, like PFF has Cousins as a top 5 quarterback. That's ludicrous.
I think we're in the Judd bin right now. I'm very excited about this.
Okay, so this is
Judd.
if you're gonna operate in Tier 2, that's fine, but don't pay for a Tier 1.
Oh God.
So there's 2 quarterbacks in this bin for me. Number 1 is Derek Carr. He has 1 year left on his contract in Vegas. A ton of uncertainty with that organization right now. They're looking to hire a new coach, and so they could offer him a contract extension, but he could say, I think I'm good, guys. I really appreciate the last 6 years or whatever it's been, but I'm just not going to sign an extension. And if that happens, they'd probably look to trade him this offseason so they could get something for him. I don't know that they would attempt to go down the franchise tag route. So if he becomes available, the Vikings would save $16 million in cap money by swapping Cousins for Carr. So if I get $16 million in savings and I get what I think is kind of the anti-Cousins, like they both have flaws, and they both can get kind of wonky and disappear for stretches, but Carr is fiery. His teammates love him. They gravitate toward him, and he's much better at completing those fourth quarter comeback, game-winning drive situations in his career. I think he has the most game-winning drives or fourth quarter comebacks since he entered the league, which is kind of amazing. He tends to rise up late in games. Kirk tends to shrink late in games. Again, they're both flawed, but give me the $16 million in cap savings and give me a couple years younger quarterback in Derek Carr.
What's the price point here for this?
19 million.
And what's it going to cost me?
I just said $16 million.
To
get
him.
Oh,
the acquisition.
So like we're
Let's
talking
say,
about a first round. Do I have to trade a first round pick? Do I have to trade a?
I would say probably a first round pick. Yeah, I mean Sam Bradford was a first round pick, and this version of Derek Carr is better than that version of
Carson Wentz turned into a first round pick.
Yeah. Put me. I would probably take this one and stick it in the intrigued cart. I'm intrigued here. I don't know I'm buying yet. I'd like to hear more of this bin and what it potentially has to offer. But I'm intrigued here. Like that, I wouldn't dismiss that one. Deshaun Watson, unfortunately, in this current climate, I'm out on for sure. The Russell Wilson one intrigues me if it's the 2009 Vikings, but I'm not as intrigued. So I would put this in my intrigued cart, pending cart. So I'm not buying, but it's there.
I love Derek Carr. I like his demeanor. He definitely has some recklessness to his game. I think even Eric Eager always complains, like, why is Derek Carr trying to be like Kirk Cousins at the same time, though he's different than Kirk Cousins? Like, there's things you watch him do that you're like, what the hell are you thinking, Derek Carr?
Yeah, he's definitely not perfect. Yeah,
he's got leadership qualities. He's got comeback ability. He's a lot cheaper. I think the odds are he's going to stay in Oakland. They're starting to win some games.
Vegas now. I made that mistake last
I know.
night.
He stays with the Raiders. I'll just say the Raiders. I think he'll stay with them. If they win, they're in. I think the odds are that he's just going to stick there for a little bit longer. But in general, like if in a world, if I could obtain him, I'd be in on it.
It's another one, too, where, like, all right, if you want to look at QB wins, hashtag QB wins, right? He's 14 games under 500 for his career, and he's only had one double-digit win season in the 8 years he's been in the NFL, but that's also been largely one of the more train-wrecky franchises in the NFL.
My concern with him is I think he's a guy when you cherry pick games and watch him at times, it's fiery and it's like, oh, that guy's good. I think when you watch him consistently, he starts to bother you more.
Yep.
So that's why I'm not. That's why I don't have him in the buy now cart, because like we do have to be very careful of Cousins' goggles again. Hey, in Washington, it's pretty good. Statistically, look at that. Yeah, great signing. And then it's like, oh, boy. So I've just heard enough things about Carr from those who have covered him and stuff that I'm not completely sold. It doesn't mean he does not have talent.
Yeah, and that's why this bin is called more appropriately priced second-tier quarterbacks. At least I know that I'm getting a second-tier quarterback, and I'm not pretending that he's something that he's not, and I'm paying appropriate money for him. The second quarterback in this bin is Jimmy Garoppolo. We talked about him last night. We argued about him, me and Realistic Randy on Purple After Dark last night. So, again, nobody is saying that he is perfect or that he clearly has flaws. I actually think he's going to emerge into sort of the Ryan Fitzpatrick category, where for the next 8 years, he's going to play for 5 different teams. He's going to be your stopgap starter while you groom a young player.
Yep.
And so he has 1 year left on his contract in San Francisco. It's a $27 million cap hit, but they or anyone can cut him for very little cap penalty. There's very little guaranteed money left on that $27 million. So there's not a lot of leverage for them to get a first or second round pick for him. I think it would be like a 4th, 5th, or 6th round pick to get 1 year of Jimmy Garoppolo. And the Vikings would save $8 million in cap space by swapping Cousins for Jimmy G, and you'd keep your options open for 2023. So if you want to lower Cousins' cap hit, you're locking him in for sure through 2023. Yep. In this case, I'm swapping these guys out. I'm saving $8 million, and my options are open for 2023. Now, people love taking jabs at Jimmy G because he tends to melt down sometimes, and we saw him even against the Vikings in that playoff game that the Niners won handily. Jimmy G spent half that game trying to give it away, and he has those stretches. But there's something about him, and maybe some of it's just the infrastructure around him. He's 20 games over 500 as a starting quarterback. And he just tends to rise up in certain situations that Kirk doesn't. Again, I think they're in the same bin, and I think Jimmy G has been a lot luckier being with the Patriots and just a better 49ers roster.
Right.
But if I get $8 million in cap savings and I get options open for 2023, sign me up.
So Jimmy G, it falls into, personally for me, a category that's going to be pretty important to think about with hopefully a new GM and coach as well. And he falls into the category of let's not get fixated on the quarterback in 2022 if you can get the cap hit down guy. So to your point, Jimmy G, easily gone. If you get a guy like Baker, easily probably gone. And so what I want the new administration to do, make no mistake, is identify a long-term fix at a good price point. So you draft a guy, hopefully at some point, and develop him. So Jimmy G, do I have interest in Jimmy G being my quarterback? Zero. Would I take it for a year? Yeah. If I can then jettison that player. And before people say, well, Kirk signed, the problem is the salary cap hit. And Kirk is going to want, I do not think, unless I'm totally wrong here, you guys, I don't see any scenario where it's a good idea for Kirk, but especially his team, and I don't care if it's the Vikings, the Broncos, the Browns, to have him in the last year of his contract at that cap hit. So I really think that there needs to be, from somebody, an extension there. And I don't want to extend Kirk. So I don't think it's well, we'll bring it back at 45 mil and it'll be great. I think that contract was done solely to do an extension.
Yes.
So again, just to be clear, I don't want Garoppolo, but would I exchange him to bring the cap hit down and then to allow my new people to move on? Yes. So I'm not committing to Garoppolo.
You're committing to the situation that's advantageous.
Exactly right. But I mean but I feel like there's a lot of pushback right now about Garoppolo. What are you guys talking about? You guys are crazy. You guys just hate Kirk. No, this is all about moving the pieces of the puzzle around right now.
Yes, and also if you were to swap Kirk for Garoppolo for 1 year and free up some cap space, and there's other places you can free it up too, I think it gives you a chance to make the playoffs in 2022. You don't have to hit a full rebuild button, and maybe you draft a quarterback in either 2022 or 2023. You got Mon developing if there's an offensive coaching staff. Like, the 49ers are basically a year out in front of what you should have done, right? I mean, they found a way to get Trey Lance. They kept Jimmy Garoppolo, who handled that situation very well.
Yeah.
They're probably going to make the playoffs. I think they haven't clinched yet, right? They have to win a game this weekend to make that happen. And they play the Rams, I think, so it's not a guarantee. But Dex, what are your Jimmy G thoughts?
I like Jimmy G. Jimmy Gorgeous, as Judd was basically saying there earlier. He's okay, but he has tendencies to give games away. And for 27 mil, I don't think so. I like the idea that that's it. Like, it's just that contract, and in fact, you could cut him and still save some money. I understand that. I'm leaning towards being out. Of all these quarterbacks that we've talked about so far, he's the one I'm honestly least interested in.
You know what's amazing? I know that there's going to be a bunch of people that listen to this or watch this, and they just take the headline. Mm-hmm. You know, Mackie and Judd would rather have Jimmy G over Kirk Cousins. It's like,
Right.
if that's the way that you're thinking about this roster puzzle, it's not a 2-dimensional puzzle. It's 3-4-dimensional.
Right.
You might be able to find a quarterback that's not as talented or good as Kirk, but that makes $30 million less and allows you to build a roster, which brings me to category number 3. Get really cheap and allow yourself to build a monster roster like we've seen elsewhere around the league. Now, obviously, if you can get really cheap with like a number 1 overall pick, Joe Burrow, that's how the Bengals flip the switch so quickly, right? And they're still rebuilding the rest of that roster, but they've got this ridiculous quarterback who's probably already a top 5 talent on a rookie scale contract. Like, that would be the holy grail. Unfortunately, the Vikings never draft high enough to take a shot like that, and they really don't trade assets on draft day to the level that you would need to move up that far. But here are 3 options to get really cheap and build out a roster. Trade for Ravens backup quarterback Tyler Huntley. This would save you about $34 million in cap space. Now, I will say Kirk Cousins is better than Tyler Huntley. Very different quarterbacks. Obviously, Huntley is mobile, can keep plays alive. You'd have to have a staff and a system that put him in the best place. You can't just plug him in and run, Kirk Cousins' system. You got to be flexible and you got to be adaptable. But he's looked very promising in the 3 or 4 games he's played significant time. And again, he is a classic example of you'd be taking a step back at quarterback from a talent standpoint, from just an established standpoint, but you'd save $34 million in cap space that you can go spend on an actual NFL center, a right guard, another pass rusher, whatever it may be. There's just a lot of flexibility there, and a quarterback with some upside.
I'd like to save my comments until I hear this entire list.
Okay.
Because I feel like the list is going to allow us the freedom to really analyze it.
All right, I'll throw the other 2 out here real quick. Again, this is the get really cheap category and build a roster with the remaining cap space. Trade for Gardner Minshew. He makes $900,000 to the salary cap. 1 year left on his deal in Philadelphia, and then he's an unrestricted free agent after 2022. So, if you made the trade and he lights it up, then you're going to have to pay him. But 1 year of lighting it up, he's not going to become like the highest paid quarterback in the league off that. So it would be a much more reasonable contract than Kirk's contract. But you would save, again, $34 million in cap space by swapping Kirk Cousins out for Gardner Minshew. Is Gardner Minshew better than Kirk Cousins? No. That's not what I'm saying. Is Gardner Minshew plus $34 million in cap space to get other players that are good and can help your team better than Kirk Cousins?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the third option is draft a quarterback with upside in the first round this year. I know it's kind of a weak quarterback class, but Malik Willis from Liberty, Sam Howell from North Carolina, these are guys that could be there within striking distance of where the Vikings pick. So you throw a first-round quarterback in a competition with Kellen Mond, and you develop these guys with your new offensive coaching staff, and then maybe you also bring in, as a third quarterback, maybe you bring in a low-cost veteran, your Ryan Fitzpatrick, I know I'm going to duck when I say this, your Teddy Bridgewater or your Mitch Trubisky. That guy can start for the first month while you develop these other 2 guys. Again, would you have a quarterback as good as Kirk Cousins? No. Would you save $30+ million in cap space that you can spread out to the rest of your team? Yes.
Right. Okay, so in the list that you just gave us, I am going to go Minshew because I would know what I'm getting unless my new people, who, by the way, to be clear, my GM is going to be able to do that very difficult thing, identify a quarterback. It's one of the most important parts of that job now, unless they think that they could get Huntley and he's really legitimately good, which I don't know. I have no idea. So I don't mind that because here's the thing. People are going to say now, because there's always comebacks, they're going to say, well, you guys are talking about the Vikings drafting a QB, possibly this spring, but, possibly in 2023. And I mean, that's assuming that they're going to be bad enough to get a top QB. No, what I'm saying at least is I have the confidence that my new GM, who unlike Rick can identify a quarterback, no matter where I finish, it can identify one and make a trade to go get one. Move up in the draft. I know it costs a ton, but again, if you hit, you're set. So you can't give up your first round pick and another first round pick in 25. What are you doing, Judge? No, if you hit, it's set. So the Minshew route actually, because here's what I like about that. The Minshew route allows me to start really building a team so that if and when I can put the quarterback in, it's the last piece. It's a key piece. It's the most important piece, right? But I can put the quarterback in to the rest of the stew, and now I'm ready to go.
And Minshew
love
again
building
gives you,
around him.
Minshew is flawed again.
Of course he is.
He is not as good as Kirk Cousins, but Minshew gives you freedom after 2022. If you want to re-sign him because you love him, you can.
Right.
If you want to just wipe the slate clean, you can. You're out from underneath big money for a non-elite quarterback.
Here's what I don't want. Here's what I'm tired of, and it has to end. I don't want the old, well, I like Justin Fields, and I made a lowball offer to try and get him, but I didn't get him. No, either you like him, and so have the cojones to go get him, or say he's not the right guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I need you to do a very difficult thing. Identify young quarterbacks. And an inability to do that is a major problem. And so if you can do that, you can move up to, I don't know, Trey Lance territory, third in the draft, right? It's going to cost you a ton. But I don't care if you've got that guy. And now, meanwhile, you backfilled around him. You've gotten a guard. You've gotten two guards, right? So this is where the whole puzzle comes together and why the cheaper quarterback for a year or maybe two, but a year for sure, really intrigues me.
Minshew's the most obtainable of these names. You're not going to have to give up more than a 5th round pick to get Gardner Minshew.
Right.
You just won't.
He played one game this year.
Yeah, and he played admirably, and he's played honestly solid when been called upon in Jacksonville too. Tyler Huntley, I think actually teams are going to start calling for him because also Lamar's now hurt, and Lamar's also honestly showing more of his flaws than he was, even though he was an MVP recently. Money is that Lamar Jackson's still the starting quarterback for the Ravens in 2022, but people are going to come calling for Huntley, and the Ravens don't have a need to just get rid of Tyler Huntley, obviously. Drafting one seems intriguing to me. If I would rather draft a quarterback and roll with Gardner as a competition, or if it's Baker Mayfield, I'd rather have that type of scenario than have the rookie quarterback and, let's say, Kellen Mond competing as your 1 and 2. I think it makes more sense to have the established vet. And I know it's a cliche, but let him sit behind him, give him some time, keep the seat warm. I think that route makes a lot more sense than drafting Malik Willis and having basically a 2-quarterback competition between Malik Willis and Kellen Mond in training camp. I don't think that's a good idea for the Vikings if they're trying to be successful in 2022.
So there you go.
Reckless speculation.
Reckless speculation Thursday on a Wednesday here for you boys. Those are 7 options to replace Kirk Cousins if you are just done kicking that can down the road, which I am. I'm good.
I think your
4 years, dude.
New GM might agree with you too. I think the new GM might be as done with kicking the can down the road as anybody else once he gets here and sees what's what.
Yep. You guys will unveil your similar lists on tomorrow's episode of Purple Daily, and if you want to put them into categories or just rank them, it's up to you guys. But let's pause real quick here and get to Write That Down and an accountability. It's the first Write That Down session of 2022, and we've got drama heading down the stretch as we tabulate the final predictions for 2021.